Chapter 4. The Remainder.
After 7 years of being kept behind by the walls of an empire, Elena's first month living by herself was an unforgiving education in the parts of life she had never got to experience. But the paperwork of a life lived together was a residue that refused to be easily washed away. It lingered in her planner and the automated text messages from Julian's accountants like an ink stain on a white rug. She had to meet Julian one last time to finalize the division of their personal assets. The meeting wasn't about the Thorn Empire the prenup had ensured that remained untouched by her departure. This was about the sentimental remainder. It was about the small things they had collected that couldn't be divided so easily. The meeting took place in the conference room of Julian's primary legal team in Midtown. It was a cold Tuesday in October. Outside, the sky was an uninviting white, mirroring the atmosphere inside. Julian was already there when she arrived. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, his back to the room. The suit he wore seemed to absorb the light, making him look like a shadow against the Manhattan skyline. When he turned, whatever emotion he'd been holding was gone.
"Elena," he said.
His voice was a sound that usually grounded her but now only made her stomach tighten with a familiar anxiety.
"Julian, let's get this over with."
She sat at the far end. The table was built for 20, and the vast polished wood between them felt like an intentional barrier. Julian's lead attorney began to read from Exhibit D, Personal Asset Divestment. The 17th century landscape from Florence. Elena's mind went back to that summer. They had been caught in a sudden Tuscan downpour. Julian had laughed, really laughed, as they ducked into a dusty gallery to stay dry. He had bought the painting because she had pointed at the light hitting the painted hills and said it reminded her of a dream. He had kissed her forehead right there in the shop, promising to build a home that felt exactly like that light. "Julian can have it," Elena said, keeping her eyes fixed firmly on the table ahead of her. "The antique celestial globe from the London auction," the lawyer continued. Elena felt a sting of regret. They had bought it together in a small shop near Mayfair. Julian had wanted it to track the historical shipping routes of the Thorn predecessors, but Elena had been fascinated by the constellations etched into the brass. She remembered him standing behind her, his chest warm against her back, as he showed her the North Star. He had promised her then that no matter how far his ships traveled, he would always find his way back to her. Now, that star was just a decorative ornament on a list of things to be divided. "Julian can keep it," she said. "The stars don't mean much in the West Village." "The custom rugs from the Connecticut study," the lawyer added. Elena remembered the day they were delivered. Julian had been so proud of the office. He had told her it was the heart of the Thorn operations, but she had seen it as the wall that kept him from her. She had spent hours on those rugs, reading while he worked. She remembered the way the light used to hit the fibers at sunset, filling the room with a warm, golden glow. "Keep them," she whispered. The limited edition photography from the Paris trip, the bridge near the Marais. The memory sliced through her composure. That trip had been their last attempt at happiness before the IVF years turned their marriage into a clinical project. Julian had carried her over a puddle on that bridge. He had looked at her with a clarity that made her feel special. Now, he wouldn't even meet her eyes. He was staring at a point just above her head, his face a wall of stone. Elena reached for a glass of water. Her hand trembled and the ice clinked against the glass. The sound was small, but it felt loud in the silent room. Julian, who had been staring at the documents, flinched. The sound seemed to snap him back into the room.
He raised a hand to the lead attorney. "Give us the room," he commanded. 10 minutes.
When the lawyers cleared the room, the silence was absolute. Julian didn't rush to her side. He walked the length of the table slowly, stopping just inches from where she sat. He looked at her, noticing how pale she was, and how she gripped the edge of the table to stay upright. "You're turning down the portfolio, the art, the properties," he said, his voice low and tight. "And now you're sitting here shaking like a leaf." "I'm fine, Julian." "You don't look fine. You look like you're trying to prove a point at the expense of your own health." He leaned in, gripping the arms of her chair, trapping her in his shadow.
"You think stripping your life down makes you strong? It just makes you reckless." I know why you're doing this, Elena. You're terrified of ending up like your father.
Elena's breath hitched. Mentioning her father was a direct strike, the one blow she wasn't prepared for.
You're so afraid of needing anyone that you'd rather walk away with nothing, Julian continued, his dark eyes searching her face with a brutal focus. You're terrified of being a Vance again.
The accusation landed, striking the one nerve she couldn't protect. You don't know anything about why I'm doing this, Elena snapped, the anger giving her a momentary surge of strength. You just know how to sign checks and build fences. I'm not doing this with you, she whispered. The fight drained out of her. She needed fresh air. She needed to be away from the scent of him and the suffocating weight of his judgment. I've taken the art from the guest rooms. You keep the rest. I have a firm to run. She didn't wait for his response. She couldn't. If she stayed another minute, her body would give her away. She turned and walked toward the heavy double doors, feeling Julian's gaze on her back.
Elena, he called out.
She paused, her hand on the brass handle, but she didn't turn around.
You're walking away from millions, he said. It wasn't a threat. It was a confused, angry statement of fact. To a man like Julian Thorne, walking away from equity was the ultimate sign of madness.
I'm buying my peace, she whispered to the wood of the door.
And it's a bargain.
She finally pushed the door open and stepped out into the corridor. She didn't look back at the glass-walled cage where she had left her marriage. She walked straight to the elevator, pressed the button, and only when the silver door slid shut did she finally allow herself to slide down to the floor, her forehead resting against her knees as she protected the only asset she had left.